All right. Now, let us jump forward to our interview for today. I did an interview with Stephen Bassett, as I read to you in the previous UFO story. Most recently, the petition that was put out was denied by the White House. As a matter of fact, this is their response. This is at the White House site, and they said that there wasn't anything out there. There was no need. The U.S. government has no evidence that life exists outside of our planet or that extraterrestrial presence has contacted or engaged any member of the human race. In addition, there is no credible information to suggest any evidence is being hidden from the public's eye. Well, it would only take a little bit of researching on your part to be able to find out the absolute ludicrous statement that they make here, because there is tons of evidence that has been presented. As a matter of fact, there's been a sighting over the White House, and yet they still deny. There have been presidents who have come out and with statements of seeing UFOs, and yet they say there is no evidence. There has been alleged treaties with extraterrestrial races being done at military bases, and yet they say there is no evidence. The lies go on and on and on. But there are activists like Stephen Bassett out there who are fighting to see that this is not going to continue to be the case, these lies. There are activists like him out there fighting to make sure people understand the truth. And in that regard, a new initiative has been put out, the Rockefeller Initiative. That's a good lead-in now for the next segment, and I'm going to go ahead and play this interview now. This is Stephen Bassett. This is the first part. I'm going to play the second part on Monday, so you'll have all weekend to be able to check this one out. Here we go. Let's listen to Stephen Bassett. All right. This is Josh, First Contact Radio. I'm here today with Stephen Bassett. He's the Executive Director of Paradigm Research Group. He's a political activist challenging government policies towards an extraterrestrial presence, non-human intelligence engaging the human race. He has spoken to audiences around the world about the implications of an imposed truth embargo, and his work has been extensively covered by national and international media. Stephen, thank you very much for being on the show again. How are you today?
I'm fine. It's always good to be with you, Josh.
Excellent. So, what's the latest? The last time we spoke, the other petition was going around, and then we all heard the bonehead announcement from the White House. What's going on since then?
Are your listeners pretty up to speed? I mean, are they going to know what we're talking about here?
Oh yes. I've been keeping everybody up to speed on what's going on.
All right. Well, the first PRG disclosure petition, along with the second petition, it was somewhat similar. Achieved 5,000 signatures and got a response from the White House on the 4th of November. That was the intention from the beginning.
Okay.
Get the White House to respond in writing, formal position, on not on the UFO question, but on the extraterrestrial non-human intelligence question.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, the UFO, the concept of the UFO, the acronym, the whole thing is of the past. It's just not where we're at now. This is not about UFOs anymore.
Okay.
This is about an extraterrestrial non-human intelligence. Keeping it about UFOs, of course, serves the truth embargo quite well, and the government is quite happy to have it that way, but I just don't intend to play by their rules. So the White House response was not surprising and yet still a little shocking, given that it's 2011, but they chose to take the hard line there's 4 or 5 possible reasons why they would have done this, but the Office of Science and Technology Policy, which is chaired by Dr. John Holdren, who absolutely signed off on it. There's no way we simply publish without him knowing what was in it.
Okay.
Was that there never has been any evidence at all for life outside the Earth or for any non-human intelligence engaging the Earth or people on it. They then re-emphasized that later in about a 9-paragraph response, when they said that there was no credible evidence for any of this. This is notable for 2 very good reasons. One, it's false. Completely false. And 2, it's indefensible. You can't defend it. It's challenged.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, of course, how they've handled this. One of the ways you get the truth embargo to keep going is you simply don't ask, don't tell. The press doesn't ask, and we don't have to tell, and everything just goes along. We don't get challenged, we dodge, we weave, we skate. And they've done that and successfully avoided being put in a position where they actually have to, quote, account for their conduct. Only on a few occasions has the government, in this case would have been the military, ever come forward and tried to be definitive. And this happened back in 1997, and the time leading up to it. They panicked because the 50th anniversary of Roswell was coming, and there was a lot of publicity about it, a lot of press. There were some projections that maybe several 100,000 people were going to go to Roswell for this special festival.
Mm-hmm.
And they were worried that this was going to maybe trigger press inquiries and investigations that might be a problem for them. So they departed from the normal procedure, which is to simply say nothing and act them and just act ignorant of the whole thing. And try and put out a third explanation for Roswell involving a mobile balloon, a nuclear detonation detection tech from that period, and crash test dummies that were dropped out of airplanes, though 5 years after Roswell actually took place. It was a huge embarrassment when they gave the press conference at the Pentagon. The media actually laughed at them, laughed at the presenter. That's a rare instance, and of course they're still trying to live that down. But now we have their formal position. First time ever the executive branch has done this. It's now a stationary target, and we're going to go after it. So the first round of petitions were fully successful. Mm-hmm. Now we go to the second round.
Okay.
And Paradigm Research Group put up Disclosure Petition 2, and almost exactly at the same time, Bryce Abel and Richard Dolan put up what they refer to as the Need to Know petition, which is fine. Okay. Now, all of PRG's petition work here with respect to the We the People project on whitehouse.gov is at the information is all at disclosurepetition.info.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The Bryce Abel and Richard Dolan petition and the promotion for it, links, everything else is at disclosurepetition.com.
Okay.
So those are the two information addresses, and then you find there the direct link to the petitions on the White House website. So they went up. However, this is a complicated and intriguing game that is being played. The White House, during the first round of petitions that started back on September 22nd, became concerned when something like 15,000 petitions came in, making them worried that, my God, we may end up having to respond to several thousand petitions here, and we can't do that. So what they did was they raised the threshold for a White House response from 5,000 signatures in 30 days to 25,000 signatures in 30 days, which was too much. They overshot there, and the result, and here's how things have worked out, because we're now 3 months into this thing, sort of how it goes. They probably got about 20,000 signatures, 20,000 petitions. In order to get posted on the site, though, you have got to go out and come up with 150 signatures. That's kind of the threshold for being posted on the site and being in play. Of the 20,000 petitions, only 400 or so have actually cleared that 150. Because most people are not in a position to promote, or they're not created enough to promote, because really this takes a lot of effort to galvanize support for a petition, even one that's on the White House website. Right. Of the 400, only a few score have cleared the threshold, and most of those were the 5,000 threshold, not the one that was eventually raised to 25,000. Okay. So from here on in, very, very few petitions are going to clear the 25,000 threshold for response from the White House, thus kind of getting them off the hook. Well, there will be a few, But it gets worse because sometime in late November, exactly when we don't know, essentially the website started to come apart like overcooked chicken and break down, so that when the two petitions that were submitted by PRG and Dolan Zabel went up, immediately we started getting emails, and we've gotten several scores of emails have come in from people that are going nuts trying to sign these petitions. If they had an account previously, they're having trouble logging in. If they didn't have an account, we're trying to create one, they're having trouble with that. They're having trouble signing the petitions. They're having problem with web browsers. Meanwhile, the site at the White House, the website, the We the People, has been down for maintenance repeatedly. It's simply come apart at the seams, and as a result, one, people are angry, they're frustrated, so they're just not inclined to promote this. They're not promoting and sharing the link. They're not able to sign, and that word has gotten around. And so these two petitions are off to a very slow start. And I believe, as far as I know, and I would assume that all petitions up there are being affected by this. So, in other words, commercial enterprises have these kinds of sites all the time, where you open an account, you receive a verification link, you get a password, you go in, and so forth. White House is not a commercial operation, and so they have not met and have not been able to meet the commercial standard that you would expect in this kind of a setup. Because obviously, if you're a company and you have these kind of problems, you just destroy your business. It's just not an option. It has to work. So why it's started to fall apart after about 2 months and worked pretty well in the beginning, who knows? They probably made some changes, did some tweaking. So essentially, the two petitions that are up have virtually no chance, well, barring some dramatic possibilities here, they don't have much chance to make 25,000 signatures, and very few of the other ones do as well. So it's a mess, all right? But gee, what isn't a mess in America today with respect to governance and what have you? The good intentions are not enough, right? You can have a good intention to help somebody across the street, but if you don't actually help them across the street, what's the point, right? The good intentions really don't mean anything. So we've got a complicated situation here. The Zabel-Dolan petition and the PRG petition are both going after the White House position response to the first disclosure petitions by bringing and putting forward direct evidence or discussing evidence that the White House now claims doesn't exist, and putting it right out there as part of the new petitions so that the media can look and say, wait a minute, they say nothing exists, but then what about this, you see, comparing the two.
Right.
And Zabel-Dolan are approaching it from the standpoint of unidentified aerial phenomena and the work that has been done by NARCAP and Richard Haynes with a huge pilot database of sightings from commercial and military pilots who've reported to them because they're not allowed to really speak about it publicly. Both commercial and military have been essentially hogtied on this for some time. So they've reported to independent entities. We have thousands of them, and we're talking silver discs 30, 40 feet off the cockpit window. You know, that's not a Boston cream pie out there. I mean, it's not a flock of geese. So it's not a UFO. It's a 40-foot silver disc. You may not know where it's from, but it's pretty phenomenal. And it's either piloted by humans or piloted by non-humans or controlled by humans or non-humans as a drone. That's only 4 possibilities. It can't be anything else. A 40-foot disc off the window. So again, UFO nonsense, right? It's about, people mistake the moon for a craft. Fine, who cares? right? It's about the evidence for the extraordinary events and phenomena that matters, and of course the government claims now none of that exists. None of it is real. None of it has any credible evidence supporting it. Now, the PRG petition is approaching it from a very much more controversial and sensitive angle, and that is the Rockefeller Initiative. Grant Cameron and others, but particularly Grant Cameron, obtained 1,000 pages of documents from the Office of Science, Technology Policy during the Clinton administration, as well as additional documents from the Clinton Library, all of which confirms that for 3 years the Clinton administration was entertaining an effort by Lawrence Rockefeller to get the Clintons to release UFO files, crank up new investigations, basically end the truth embargo. This went on for 3 years. The Clintons met with Rockefeller at his ranch. Rockefeller had a bunch of researchers up to his ranch in Wyoming to plan strategy. There were meetings. There were reports made. A book came out of it. This went on for 3 years. So if the Office of Science and Technology Policy says now there is no evidence for life outside the planet or any kind of engagement, what was the Office of Science and Technology Policy under Clinton doing? Now, what's particularly interesting about that is that the people that knew about this initiative and in some cases were involved in it include major figures in the Democratic Party and the current Obama administration.
Hold on one second, okay?
Had never spoken publicly about it and never been asked a single question by the press about it. In other words, don't ask, don't tell. Who were these people? Well, Bill Clinton knew about it, was involved in it. He never said anything. His wife, Hillary Clinton, knew about it, was involved in it. Now she's the Secretary of State. His staff was Leon Panetta. He knew about it. He's now the Secretary of Defense. Was the head of the CIA. John Podesta was involved and knew about it. He was a TA to Clinton. Now he was just recently the chairman, the co-chair of the Obama transition team to help pick the new administration. And he was the most frequent visitor to the White House of anybody in the first 90 days. Bill Richardson, the friend of the Clintons, almost certainly knew about it. He's governor of New Mexico. You see where I'm going here?
I sure do.
These people want to run the country. They want to run the State Department, the Defense Department. They want to run states, but they don't want to talk about this.
Right.
And they don't want to be asked about it. And the press has actually gone along with this, but I don't think they're going to go along with it much longer. And so the purpose of the second petition was to put that right there. And so now the Rockefeller Initiative sits on the White House website. In the form of that petition, it's only got about 2,700 signatures, thanks to the collapse of that site. But nevertheless, it's going to be up there for at least until December the 30th.
Okay.
So you see what's going on here. There's a chess game going on, and we made a very strong move a while back, and now we've made a second move, but we've been thwarted by the coincidental unraveling of the White House site, which is causing havoc with people all around the world. Some people can find, some can't. Some can open accounts, some can't. And it's not clear why. We've identified certain browsers that don't work with it. The Google Chrome browser doesn't seem to work very well with it.
Okay.
Opera doesn't seem to work well with it. So again, good. I guess game well played, right? I mean, they have blunted this. Now, here's the deal.
Okay.
The simple fact is that even with these problems, we could put 25,000 signatures up there in a single day.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, 25,000 people go create an account, takes a couple of minutes, get back an email with a confirmation link, click the link, and then you get the password and your username. You go in, you log into the We the People, and you sign all the petitions you want to sign. And it's typical arrangement. People have done it many times. It takes 4 or 5 minutes.
Well, while we were talking, I went to the site, I just registered, and I was able to sign the petition without any problems.
Well, that's good. Maybe they've even fixed it. I mean, it was down for maintenance the other night for about the 5th time. But here is the dilemma. I think it's a dilemma, and it's a confounding thing.
Okay.
This is the most important issue in the world.
It would seem like it.
Nations and peoples, the future of the human race is enormous. And we've been kept out of it. We've been denied, information and the ability to assess and perhaps participate in this for 6.5 decades. The polls have been done repeatedly by Time and Reuters and Roper, CNN, Ipsos. And these polls are serious polls. They're not one of these internet things where you simply put up a statement and say, do you believe this is a true yes or no, and people click on it. No, we're talking about real polls. The kind that have percentage errors, a margin of error of 2, 3, 4, 5%. And these polls have shown repeatedly that the number of people that believe the U.S. government is not telling the truth about this is in the 80 to 85% range. That's about 240 million adults in the United States. But the number that actually believe that ETs are here, that they are behind this phenomenon, even to the point of living amongst us, which I think my jury is out on it, is around 45 to 60%, approximately 140 million adults believe ETs are here now.
Right.
140 million. We need just 25,000 of those people to put their first name and last initial on a White House petition in order to help drive this thing forward, force another response from the White House. And I'm wondering, what's the problem here? I mean, people can take a few minutes to, address an issue of this importance. Do they really just want the government to keep lying about everything until the country collapses? Which, by the way, is in the process of doing, in case anybody hasn't noticed. The government built on lies cannot succeed.
Sometimes it seems like people prefer the lies. It's mind-boggling, isn't it?
Well, it looks like they prefer the lies, but then they go out in the streets and march and sit and occupy because they've been lied about finances and banking and everything else. I mean, I guess I understand when it hits your pocketbook, when you lose your home, your house, your pension, your job. Yeah, you get angry, you go to the street. All right, I understand that. But we're not asking people to go to the street. We're asking them to simply go and spend 5 minutes, sign a petition.
Right.
And so if the people do not if the people don't make an effort to get the government to start treating them like adults, to allow them to the table, instead of having to sit out in the living room on the cardboard, with the cardboard table with the paper napkins and the knives, plastic knives and forks, then the government's going to keep treating them that way. And they're not going to know what's going on until it comes up finally and bites them in the ass.
Right. I think it's very important, and it's ludicrous that they make the comments that they make in light of the information that's out there about the presidents who have seen things, deciding over the White House in the 50s. I mean, on and on. It's just ludicrous.
Well, of course, being ludicrous is hardly new for government in these times. So in that way, they're being consistent.
They are indeed.
But what can I say? They have made a strategic error here, maybe even deliberately so. One never knows, by putting that position down on paper. So now they have, at some point, they're going to have to defend it. At some point, certain media are going to look at that statement and compare it against the evidence that's out there that, in many cases they actually do know about, even though they really don't investigate or take the issue where it needs to go. And they're going to become a little bit, I would just say, nonplussed about it. There's a limit. They may feel, look, this is now getting ridiculous. And we're not comfortable with going along with this any longer. The White House might have put out a much more nuanced position that would have left a little latitude, cover their took this as it is. But they didn't do that. They essentially said, no, 60 years of citizen science work, all of the evidence, the photographs, the video, the radar logs, the thousands of pilots sightings, the witnesses coming forward, astronauts coming forward, trace cases, crop circles, cattle mutilation, all of this stuff. No evidence at all there. There's no evidence at all for non-human intelligence, which means it must be explained some other way. Of course, it hasn't been, but that's just an extraordinary action on their part. but it's exactly what I would ideally would have liked. I mean, other than disclosure itself, that was the best, second best.
Right.
Was to take that hard a line. They've done it. So, if I'm them, and I realize I've made a mistake like that, then I would be trying to backtrack. I would be trying to try to work out of this problem. And one way to do it would be to jack the signature total way up, so very few signatures can get through anymore. And then another way would be to simply make the site just very difficult so that people just don't want to bother with it. And so essentially they're able to maybe work through this and it'll fade away. That's what I would do if I were them, in a sense. I mean, just knowing what I know about the truth embargo and government mentality. It's a mistake. It's very obvious. And it's going to probably blow up in their face. And it's not going to work. They have now put themselves in writing as to what their position is. Now they have to defend it. And there's only 5 ways, I believe, that it can be defended. And it's a political lie. Yes, we know plenty of things, some of our science and military and intelligence advisors, but we cannot acknowledge that we know anything. And they have to take a hard line for political reasons because we don't want to damage the president's prospects in the next election. It's a national security law. Yes, we know a great deal. Yes, we know it's true. But for national security reasons, we simply still cannot acknowledge that anything is true. We have to pretend it's not there. Third possibility is that they just don't know anything at all. That somehow or another, all of the executive branch staff, including the military intelligence and science advisors, somehow managed to completely miss the entire 60-year phenomena, the books, the thousands of books, the hundreds of documentaries on History Channel and A&E and the Learning Channel and the Science Channel, and now even on National Geographic. Managed to miss all of that and just unaware there's a phenomenon going on. What UFOs? That's a possibility.
And that's hard to believe that could even, I mean, some of these stations that they put out they're behind the stations. You know, they're Washington organizations that are putting out some of these channels and these shows.
Sure. So the fourth possibility is that, in fact, their position is correct. There's only 4. I said 5. It's 4. Okay. Meaning that, in fact, there is no evidence. This entire 60-year extraordinary history is nothing but a global misunderstanding. And there's nothing here. There's no ETs. There's no phenomena of note. There's no craft. There's no unusual technology. Nothing. It simply doesn't exist. These are the only 4 bases on which they can defend that position. And any reasonable person would see instantly that all 4 bases cannot stand. And so should they be challenged?
Absolutely.
On that initial statement by the press, by any 1 or 2 significant media centers who are going to commit, they're in deep trouble, and the truth embargo might not survive 30 days.
No, they definitely need to be challenged because the lies seem like they're coming, no pun intended, but fast and furious in all different branches. And it's, you know, people, I kind of hope that people are waking up more and more and are seeing all the lies.
Well, they are. There's no question that the mendacity of government has become increasingly obvious. That's why you're seeing so much dissatisfaction, distrust in government, approval rating so low. I think Congress recently hit 9%.
Very low.
The media went out there to try to find some comparisons, sort of compare it to other things that had less than 9% approval rating, and they couldn't find anything. Believe it or not, they just couldn't. I mean, a lot of nasty things going on, but even those things had approval ratings better than the Congress at 9. So the people are aware increasingly that government is out of the truth business and is into the clandestine business, the don't ask, don't tell business, you don't have a need to know business. All of this, they know this. They're still processing it. They're angry, and in some cases they've gone to the streets, particularly over the enormous financial frauds and financial misbehavior of major financial entities who literally went off the scale in terms of greed, arrogance, disdain. And that's a good sign, but there's a long way to go. The people are going to have to get angry about a lot more than just that. But as I've said many times, this is a truth movement. It's also a freedom movement. Lies are like shackles. They bind you. They limit you. And furthermore, there is evidence that enormous work has been done trying to understand the technology of these craft, because a number of them have come into the hands of the U.S. government and been studied with unlimited budgets for some time. Mm-hmm. And it's not uncommon to hear, certainly in the past and even today, some scientist or bureaucrat in government or perhaps in a defense contractor talk about how, well, whatever you think we have, we're 50 years ahead of that. We got much better technology than that in the secret world. Meanwhile, we're facing environmental problems, massive economic issues. We've got huge gaps between the rich and the poor. We've got undeveloped countries that are just going to be spawning terrorism for decades because they're unable to deal with the demands of growing populations, resources. And so this idea that the hidden world has got all this technology is 40, 50, 60 years ahead of us, I'm thinking, gee, we could kind of use that.
Yeah, it would be helpful.
Right? I mean, they're awful proud of themselves, but what about the rest of the human race? Mm-hmm. Now, I understand there are national security issues. I'm not talking about some super secret guided this or that. But we're not just talking about that. We are also talking about the energy system and the propulsion system of those 50-foot flying silver discs that pilots have seen on many occasions. And they're not using oil and gas.
Nope.
And they're not flying aerodynamically. And that's all you need to know that there's potentially profound technology breakthroughs. And it's hidden. And the government has also gone about doing other things. They scoop up patents under public domain or national security so that inventors may come up with possible breakthroughs in gas mileage, alternative energy sources, and these patents are just scooped up and taken and never seen again. This is also a form of technology suppression. Meanwhile, we are supposed to just fend for ourselves. If gas goes to $6, $7 a barrel, a gallon, well, that's tough. So what's at stake here is actually much bigger than I think most people can really understand. And I understand that. I understand how difficult it is. This is a very complicated issue, and it is unprecedented. There's no rule books on this one. Mm-hmm. The advocacy movement operates like most advocacy movements, though with tiny little bits of money. But the issue and the phenomenon itself is certainly unprecedented. And so I understand that people are having trouble getting it. They're having trouble understanding how important it is, and that's why they're not pressing their their congressional representatives enough, the media enough, why they're not providing funding for the advocacy work. In time, however, I think they will get it. I think every year more people do get it. Mm-hmm. And so a critical mass will be achieved at some point. Until then, we press on with more petitions, with more projects, more books, more media interviews, and whatever it takes to keep raising public awareness. And I'm hopefully going to have a column in Huffington Post soon. We've submitted. I think it's under discussion. It would be nice if that two already out, done, or ready to go. We're also going to change the dialogue. It's time to stop talking about UFOs and start talking about non-human intelligent craft, guided craft. It's time to put the old language behind and start using a language that's appropriate, our language, not the government's language, not the language of truth embargo.
Right.
So we're going to see more of that.
Excellent.
And we're going to see more contactee evidence developing. We may see some well-known people coming forward with their own personal stories. We may see some of that. That's going to be interesting. But this thing cannot be contained much longer.
No, and
it simply cannot be contained without draconian changes in our governmental structure in the United States. It's just not
right.
hold up.
It's going to be curious to see how it does unfold, because so many people have that idea of 2012 in their mind, and that in itself might be enough to open up consciousness to explore the other possibility.
It is a sensitized year without question.
Mm-hmm.
People have invested a lot of expectations in it for change, transition, transformation. Understandable.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly the disclosure event would be all of those things. So we may have a little bit more, how would you say, emotional engagement by the general population next year in this. That would be good.
That would be great. It's curious. Absolutely. It's interesting to see how, too, this NDAA bill is going to play into everything, the National Defense Authorization Act, and if that's somehow related to suppressing more and more information. And
I don't think it'll pass, but I think if it passes, I think Obama will veto it. But it's interesting that they ran it by the viewing stand.
Right.
Boy, so many possibilities here. Something just happened recently I noted with considerable interest. SETI
mm-hmm.
was created in the very late 50s. There were various programs doing things like searching for ET intelligence, but the formalization of it comes at the end of the 50s. NASA was behind it. NASA was providing the initial money.
Okay.
And it was a propaganda program from day one. And the government, elements within the government, military intelligence, and probably certainly some people working for NASA in the early days knew that the ET presence was real. So they had to create this entity and support this entity with their money until the Congress finally yanked the budget. The search for signals. It was all about misdirection and taking pressure off the government, because the government could constantly say to critics, we do care, and we're looking for the signals in the sky, and if we find any, we'll tell you.
Right.
So it was essentially a bogus program the day it was created. Not that there aren't some benefits that can come from developing, advancing radio telescopy, but it was a front program and a bit embarrassing. The government took the money away. Not surprisingly, private money immediately came forward. And on SETI goes as this buffer between the people and the government in terms of the government being challenged on much more profound evidence. I mean, the amount of evidence for the ET presence is millions of times greater than the evidence for ET signals.
Mm-hmm.
But not too long ago, Paul Allen pulled the funding for the Allen Array telescopes. He was going to put in more money up, and they had to shut it down. Not surprisingly, some people came forward, including Jodie Foster, which one can understand that, and it kind of makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
She put a few $100,000 up, and they used that money, I think, to push their cause. And lo and behold, SETI has just gotten some more government money again. They were getting some NASA money again, but now they got some government money. And of all places, it's coming from the Air Force Space Command.
Interesting.
Not NASA, the Air Force Space Command. This is the group that is involved in the analysis and the engagement of space on the basis of its weapons potential. And so the Space Command did something interesting. I think this was as far as I'm concerned, an excuse to simply put money in SETI to keep it going. They needed an excuse, and they came up with one which is modestly clever, to look for evidence of planets outside of our solar system,
right?
Extrasolar planets. And they were finding them, and they've been finding a lot of them. And so they found enough in a particular section of sky that they were specifically surveying that they were able to extrapolate that to a rough census of the galaxy. And the number that was put out in the initial release that they made was about 50 billion planets out there. I'm sure that number is much bigger than that, but perhaps as many as 500 million planets in the zone, temperature zone around their sun that would allow liquid water to be flowing, which means essentially 500 million potential Earths. So this is notable and interesting. The Space Command gave money to SETI and said, look, we're going to pay you to direct your signal-seeking radio telescopes on these specific planets to see if we can pick up a signal from them. In other words, they got some targets now, very specific there. These are potentially life-supporting planets. Now, the life might be primitive. It could be where the Earth was 100 million years ago, or it could be more advanced. Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, why? Why did they do that?
Especially if there's no evidence. Why would they suddenly decide that they're going to look at a couple of planets when the White House is so sure there's no evidence?
Well, there's no evidence. That doesn't mean the White House is saying there's no extraterrestrials. There may be extraterrestrials, but there's no evidence that there are. But what the Space Command is saying is, well, we don't have credible evidence yet, so let's go find some. Let's look at signals from some of these planets or star systems that have planets, particularly planets in the Goldilocks zone. Not too hot, not too cool, just right. And then if a signal were to develop, well, then they have the option of releasing that to people as a sort of step in for the ET issue, meaning, guess what? Apparently there's extraterrestrials out there. We just picked up some signals. And then wait a dignified amount of time and say, guess what? And it looks like some of them actually traveled here. And wait a dignified amount of time and say, well, guess what? Some of them are kind of interacting with human beings, taking them into craft, doing some work on them, some genetic work, things like that, right? And then some dignified time passes and they have something else. That's possible. But all I can say is, I know, and people should Google this, U.S. Space Command, Air Force Space Command, and SETI, S-E-T-I, and notice that they have done this and ask themselves why. What is going on here? But I can assure you whatever's going on, they're not going to tell us, right? So things are heating up, and 2012 has a good chance to be the year, in my view, very much a good chance to be the year, and in which case we will have a new world, and I guess the Mayan prophecy will be proven true.
It's going to be an interesting year. I'm guessing on that too.
I'm looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly hope disclosure happens next year. I don't see how it can last past the summer, but boy, we've been waiting a long time, so I guess one should be careful about that. But the international movement is continuing to grow and coalesce, and there will be more pressure on more nations, more releases of documents by other nations, and possibly some very well-known contactees coming forward, which is really going to make the White House position just untenable,
right.
in the 2012, and I think something will give. So that's where we're at, Josh.
Okay.
I invite people to go to disclosurepetition.info,
okay,
disclosurepetition.com, whitehouse.gov, and go to We the People, or use the direct link from the sites I just mentioned. Register if you haven't already. create an account if you haven't, rather, then click on the confirmation link, use the password and username that they sent you, log in, sign the disclosure petitions. There too.
Okay.
And spread the word through Twitter, Facebook, MySpace, website links, whatever is available to you, and get people at least aware of it so they can make a decision whether they want to go and sign it as well.
Okay.
And I'm going to do my best. I know Richard Dolan is going to do his best to see if we can salvage the current situation.
Okay.
By getting an extension on the petitions and also possibly maybe motivating an audience to say, look, truth, justice, and freedom are don't come easy. You really have to work for them. Certainly that's been the way in the past.
Right.
And so regardless of what the White House problems are, if enough people press it, they'll get signed, and we'll get those signatures by December 30. There's no reason why we cannot unless they shut the whole site down entirely.
Right.
So we're going to do our best to see if we can do that. In which case, if we succeed, then sometime about mid-January, the White House is going to respond to both of these petitions. I don't think they can lump them together. They may. And I really don't know how. I would not want to be the OSTP person or anybody else in the executive branch that had to respond to these two current positions. It would not be fun.
Right.
Not fun at all. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. This is a political advocacy movement, and as people know, the goal or the role of activists are to afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted.
All right. Well, it's good to know that you're out there, with such passion and really working to make this happen, because that's what it takes. Passionate people to make things happen that need to happen.
Well, certainly, it's hard to be an activist on social issues without having some passion.
Right.
It's very hard because there's no money. And so if you don't have a passion for it, there's a real disconnect.
Right.
And I'm glad, but we need nuts and bolts. We need funding. We need the fundamentals that will allow us to convert that passion into results. And there is only one result that matters right now, and that is the formal acknowledgement of the ET presence. Not the release of every file and every secret overnight or anything else. It is simply the acknowledgement. Yes, they are here. So let's talk about it. Let's deal with it. Let's engage it. Whatever. But as long as the government continues to lie, it's not helping anybody. It's all bad. During the Cold War, I understood the reasons for national security basis to withhold this. I understood it. Hard to second guess it. Cold War's been over 20 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So they need to move on.
Right.
And they do not have that kind of justification anymore. And I think that you can no longer support the truth embargo. It's done. It's toast. It needs to be taken out of the toaster and tossed out the window, really. Let the birds eat it.
Yep.
It's time to get real here. People want real government. They want honest government. They want accountable people. They're really trying to make this message, and it's astounding at how tin air the big shots still have, as the people resoundingly express these desires for truth in government, for accountability, and so forth. I assume that many of them are going to be replaced in 2012. I expect to see a bloodbath amongst the company in 2012. But you never know. A lot can happen in a year and a half.
A lot can happen, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, whatever I can do to help the situation, I'm here. I'll have the links up on the site. I got them right now at the Facebook, and I will encourage everybody, direct them to these petitions, and do whatever I can do. Appreciate it, Gus. Appreciate it. And I'll get back with you. Okay. Perhaps if we have some breakthroughs on the petitions later in December, maybe we can do another show toward the end of December. That sounds good. All righty. All right, Stephen. Well, keep up with all the good work out there, and we'll talk to you soon.